Thank you, Dr. Makish. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Senator Mark Warner, Vice Chairman of the Senate Select Committee on Intelligence, for a fireside chat with Jenna-Lee Keefe-Singer, SCSP's Senior Director for Government Affairs.
Where's the fireside?
Good morning, everyone. As you can see, I'm not Jenny Lee. I'm Martijn Rasser, Senior Director for Economy at SCSP. I want to thank you all very much for being here today. It's a true honor to welcome Senator Mark Warner of the Commonwealth of Virginia here today. As you know, the senator is also Vice Chairman of the Select Committee on Intelligence. During his tenure in the Senate, Senator Warner has established himself as a bipartisan leader who has served as a key author and negotiator of several pieces of critical legislation aimed at rebuilding our nation's infrastructure, improving cybersecurity, and restoring domestic manufacturing. And I'm very much looking forward to our conversation today, where we'll discuss his assessment of strategic technology competition, critical digital infrastructure vulnerabilities, as well as policy initiatives to strengthen America's position in advanced computing, AI development, and telecommunications security. Welcome, Senator.
Thank you, Martin. Well, thank you for having me.
To kick things off, during your time in leadership of the Senate Intelligence Committee, you've been outspoken about China's technology ambitions. How do you explain to everyday Americans why they should care about who builds our telecommunications infrastructure and other networks?
Well, again, thank you for having me, and kudos to the organization, my friend Eric Schmidt, for his leadership on so many of these issues. You know, we've had military competitors in the past. I think about Russia, although I still believe they're a competitor. I'm not sure the president agrees with that. But China is kind of a competitor of a different level. Russia was always a military and ideological competitor. It was never really an economic competitor. Its economy is basically the size of Florida's. China has military ambitions. It has less ideological competition with us ambitions, but has a completely different view in terms of authoritarian state. But it is a remarkable country in terms of its technology innovation. You know, it starts with literally stealing $500 billion a year of intellectual product from the United States and other aligned nations. And the wake-up call for me as a former telecom guy was back 2017 timeframe when as 5G was starting to roll out, and we're suddenly seeing this new enterprise Huawei taking basically huge amounts of market share. And we didn't even have an American competitor. We had obviously our friends at Ericsson and Nokia and Samsung, but China was launching ahead in a huge way. And one of the things I saw in China was not only the fact that they were dominating on the equipment side, but they were starting to flood the zone on the standards and protocol setting organizations where, again, frankly, America had always had a lead. That was a huge wake-up call for me that in terms of 5G, in terms of 6G and O-RAN, they were a major player. And I frankly believe that national security is no longer defined by simply who has the most tanks and guns. It really is technology competition. And we saw that we've seen that in next generation wireless. We're seeing it in space, where they have really moved very, very quickly. We're seeing it in energy. I was at a fusion conference recently, and we're making great strides, but they're making great strides as well. AI, clearly, I think about Kai-Fu Lee's book about 10 years ago, where he predicted China would actually win the competition. That has not taken place so far, but clearly they are extraordinary. Domain after domain, China's playing in every one of these areas. And I think it's terribly important. I mean, in the little video we saw, what happens if China penetrates our networks and is able to turn off some of our systems. That is very much of a potential reality. And we have to up our game dramatically And I think we've done that. I think chips and other investments we're making. I have to say at the outset, though, the two things that probably concern me the most, kind of real time, and as real time as this week with the President's address to the Congress, is that we've always done our technology innovation usually in concert with friends and allies around the world. We may be the lead, but we often have collaborative relationships with countries all around the world. That kind of realignment that seems to be taking place as the administration moves towards more alignment, candidly, with authoritarian regimes like Russia, still a little bit TBD on China, concerns me greatly whether the kind of collaborative innovation that normally takes place with other democracies will be, frankly, undermined on that. And then when we think about protecting our intellectual property, I worry as well when you're seeing the Doge bros come in and randomly cut government programs without a lot of knowledge. And we see that now with almost a complete decimation of CISA, which is, was set up not to be a regulatory entity, but to be that collaboration with business on cybersecurity. I think that is extraordinarily dangerous. We're reading now where they're going in and starting to take out folks within the intelligence community. That is dangerous. And right as I was hoping one of the top pieces of agenda going forward with the new president would be actually rethinking a whole cyber offense doctrine, because I think we do need to do that. But if we're kind of if we're pissing off our friends and undermining our intelligence community and at the same time cutting R&D, that is a recipe for disaster, and that would be an opportunity for China and other authoritarian nations to really leap ahead. And it's something I think we need to rally bipartisan support against, and it's something, frankly, we need our partners in industry to kind of have our backs as we try to make that case.
You raised the point of how we are at risk of falling behind China. We're also under attack. You referred to the recent Salt Typhoon telecom hacks last year, some of the worst in U.S. history. This impacted multiple telecom giants, T-Mobile, AT&T, Verizon. What are the most immediate and impactful steps the United States and the private sector can take today to strengthen our cybersecurity defenses?
Well, first of all, Salt Typhoon, it continues to kind of blow my mind that this was not a head-exploding moment for most Americans, that it was not front-page news. And we all know news cycles last all of a nanosecond at this point. But I thought the fact that China has penetrated all of our telecom networks and has demonstrated the ability to literally pick anyone's particular phone number and then literally listen real time to your voice conversations or get all of your chat conversations. And the fact that people didn't say, holy crap, we got to rally to the front was pretty stunning to me. I think there may be a presumption that many Americans think, and this is not the case, I can guarantee you, that who cares, everybody's listening to our conversations anyway. That is not the case in terms of the American government. We have lots of restrictions on that. But the fact that China has this potential and demonstrated it during the campaign was one, stunning to me. Two, the fact, and I say this as an old telecom guy, no critique of the telecom industry, but the fact of how we put our telecom industry together was we cobbled together a series of independent networks with really old equipment. So China got in because our systems are so vulnerable, and they have burrowed in, and we're now months and months after the discovery of the hack, and we still have no guarantee that they've been put out. So that continues to surprise me. And the fact remains that there is, unless we have minimum cyber standards in the telecom industry, we're never going to get them, even if we fully extract them at this point, the ability to get back in because we don't have those minimum cyber standards is a real problem. Now, I'm not saying we should do a rip and replace of all the old equipment, but having some de minimis standards. I've got legislation, that I'm still, talking to one of my Republican friends. This could make bipartisan. I'm actually, I've been trying. I know Senator Cruz, Ted's going to come over later. I'm, would love to work with Ted as position as chair of Commerce. But this is not. I say this with respect to my old colleagues in telecom. This is not going to happen with simply an ask. You are going to need some level of minimum standards. We've done this in the financial sector. We've done it in energy. The idea that we should do it in telecom, I think makes sense. That'll take a negotiation. I think right behind that will come a need to do minimum cyber standards in healthcare as well. We are one major hack away from lives being lost because of vulnerabilities in the healthcare system. And I think, because we all know defense is so much harder, you got to be perfect all the time. What I was hoping we could do was, kind of raise our standards, telecom, healthcare, elsewhere, but also then have a thoughtful, bipartisan conversation about redefining cyber offense in this country. We have been basically pummeled by China, Russia, lesser extent Iran. We've seen enormous financial gains from North Korea from cyber attacks. I think we need a cyber offense strategy where we would have lower standards of attribution against major adversaries like China and Russia. I think most Americans probably presume that we are into their the bad guys' networks the way they are in ours, and Salt Typhoon's telecom. The other one, Volcano Typhoon, I think we call it, which shows where the China was in many of our utilities, water systems, otherwise. That is extraordinarily frightening as well. We have a doctrine that kind of operates on rules of war based in the 1980s. I think it needs to be updated. So that's where I hope we would head. Although, again, I got to quickly add, we do ourselves no favor when, I would argue, when we not only cut off aid with Ukraine, cut off intelligence sharing with Ukraine, but also, insanely, pause all cyber activities against Russia. Russia has not paused its cyber attacks against the United States. The idea that we are unilaterally disarming to try to curry favor with Putin is, again, I think, a recipe for disaster.
Let me switch gears and talk about some domestic legislation. So you co-sponsored the Bipartisan Chips and Science Act, something that's been very much in the news the past few days. Could you tell us how this bill, how it's been enacted so far, where we stand today as far as reshoring semiconductor manufacturing?
Well, John Cornyn and I put together the CHIPS bill back, 3-4 years ago. Without the CHIPS bill, there would have never been another fab built in America. End of story. We could argue, would love to have a market-based competition alone. Every other nation state, and particularly Taiwan and throughout Asia, they both had lower costs of labor, lower costs of construction, but they had huge subsidies from their respective governments. If we had not put CHIPS together, $52 billion, which sounds a lot, but frankly, on a relative basis compared to our competitors, was small, and compared to the PRC was tiny in terms of government support. We wouldn't have had the kind of construction announcements that have been made. I've got Micron's trying to expand in Virginia. Is it perfect? No. But without it, there would not have been another fabrication facility built in America. We still need to do more on research, particularly on some of the tools equipment. We may have spent, we spent a lot of money on the fabs, and the incumbents basically, I think, got more than they deserved in certain cases. We didn't spend as much on some of the other parts of the process, particularly the tools, where I think we would have done more. And there are still challenges. I mean, obviously, this is no breaking news. Intel has serious problems. How we negotiate that, I think it's great what was announced about TSMC. We need to bring, TSMC is still far and away particularly on the manufacturing side, way ahead of the rest of the world, and bringing TSMC more here to this country in a major way is the right thing to do, and I commend the president on that. But we've got to be willing to make the level of government investments, I would argue, not just in chips, but in quantum, I think in energy, I'm a big advocate of it, both fusion, but SMRs. We're never going to power the data centers with traditional energy sources. We're going to need to move there and make investments in that area. I think that as an old telecom guy that had a wake-up call with Huawei, the next domain where I think we're going to see China way ahead of us is bio, in biomanufacturing, in synthetic bio, and the company that we will all soon have on our lips is BGI, Beijing Genomics Institute, and we're going to say, holy heck, why didn't we see this coming? We need to make those kind of similar major government investments in those fields. And unfortunately, with some of the, I think, random cutbacks on R&D that are taking place, we're sending exactly the wrong signal to our competitors, but we're also sending the wrong signal to our partners. That combined with this bizarre move away from alliance with democracies towards alliance with authoritarian states, I think is just a disaster.
Let me ask you a follow-up on SMRs, small modular reactors. So you've been a big advocate for building out digital and physical infrastructure. Northern Virginia in particular is, I believe it accounts for about 70% of the global internet traffic.
Loudoun County in and of itself has a huge, is probably the single biggest leader.
So what do you tell to constituents that are concerned about energy and land use challenges when it comes to the build out of these massive data centers?
Well, a couple of things. One, they shouldn't all be concentrated in one jurisdiction. Two, I do think local jurisdictions ought to have more say on that. Three, there are some creative things going on in Virginia. Henrico County, a county of about 400,000 people right outside of Richmond, they took all of their revenue from their data centers and committed it to housing. So $60 million a year for 5 years going, that's way more than the whole state puts in, and they basically are using that to buy land and do some other things where they then bring in affordable housing, and that generation of both the land acquisitions, and then they can waive for that affordable housing, the sewer connect fees, permitting fees, which takes down another $50,000 on the cost of that housing unit, and then get it permitted. So they've taken a challenge and said, all right, we're going to use the revenue for a purpose-driven idea. I think that is hugely important. I do know we're running down, but I want to also say with the data centers, you got to have the power generation. And we still, in the IRA, we did some progress. We still need to get that over that hump of some of the first of the kind on SMRs. I would argue there could be some collaboration around a number of states. The hyperscalers are starting to say, I think finally realize they're going to have to put some capital up as well. The utilities are loath to do this on their own, so we're going to need more public-private. Amazon and Dominion, we've got an interesting project in Virginia as well. We need a variety of these, and we need to move it quickly, not only to power the needs for AI, but also this is a national security issue. As we've seen with oil-producing nations through most of the second half of the 20th century, if you become dependent upon a sole source of energy from a single location, that's going to tie up your economy for a long time. I still remember the oil shock of the 70s. SMRs and powering next generation power, particularly for AI-driven, if China or Russia sells the SMRs to nation states around the world, they're going to be dependent upon them for generations. There are many, many countries that would rather buy American or Western technology, but their response so far is, if this is so good, why don't you build it in your own nation? That means we need a quicker regulatory process. We need players making the investments. And I think we combine that, I know our time's up, I think that advantages us greatly in terms of this competition.
That's an excellent note to end on. Would you please join me in thanking Senator Warner for the remarks? Thank you.